Something killed over 100 people in rural France across 3 years, and nobody could stop it. Not the farmers, not the army, not the king's own personal gunmen. And the craziest part, we still don't actually know what it was. This is the story of the Beast of Gévaudan, and I promise you, whatever you're picturing right now is not nearly weird enough. Between 1764 and 1767, a creature killed roughly 100 people in the south of France. That number alone sounds insane, but the real story is so much stranger than the headline. Because this wasn't just a rogue predator picking off stragglers. The beast specifically preferred attacking women and children, and above all, young girls. It ignored livestock entirely. It hunted people like it knew exactly what it was doing. And when hunters finally tracked it down and shot it, it got back up and walked away. I'm going to take you through the full 3 years of this, who the victims were, what the attacks actually looked like up close, how a king got personally involved and still failed, and then the ending, which almost nobody tells correctly. Because the person who finally stopped this thing was not who you'd expect. And the circumstances around that final kill are genuinely one of the strangest moments in recorded history. There's also one detail about this creature, a physical description from the time, that I'm saving for the end, because once you hear it, the whole mystery reframes itself. Keep that in the back of your mind. Let's start with what was actually happening on the ground. The attacks began in 1764, right after the bloody and costly 7 Years' War, which had left deep psychological and financial scars across France. The people of Gévaudan weren't just dealing with a monster. They were already exhausted, already broke, already shaken. And then this started. Gévaudan itself was a quiet region, secluded in the mountains of Margeride in the south of France, and largely cut off from the outside world. So isolated, in fact, that the French resistance would later use it as a stronghold in World War II, specifically because of how hard it was to access. The terrain was rough and mountainous, far too rocky to grow much by way of crops. This was a poor, remote, deeply Catholic farming community, and something was hunting their children. The first recorded fatal attack happened on June 30th, 1764, when a 14-year-old shepherdess named Jeanne Boulet was tending a flock of sheep. She was buried without sacraments, without the last rites her faith required. Because the attack came so fast, there was no time to confess her sins first. In a deeply Catholic community, that detail alone tells you how sudden and violent this was. But here's what most people don't know about Jeanne. She wasn't even the first person this thing went after. Boulet was not the creature's first victim. About 2 months prior, a young woman tending cattle was attacked by something described as like a wolf, yet not a wolf, but escaped because the herd defended her. The cattle charged and drove it off. She survived. Jeanne, alone with sheep, did not. And after Jeanne, the attacks just kept coming. Her death was followed by others, almost exclusively women and children. Throughout 1764, victims were found with their throats torn out or heads gnawed off. Contemporary press accounts described the beast as often removing the victim's head and draining all the blood, leaving nothing behind but bones. These weren't just animal attack reports. They were horror stories, circulating across the country in newspapers and illustrated posters, each one showing a slightly different, more monstrous version of the creature. The violence was so shocking, news of it traveled from the countryside all the way to the royal palace at Versailles. And that's when things escalated. As the death toll climbed, terrified locals noticed a chilling pattern. The monster completely ignored the sheep and cattle grazing in the pastures, choosing instead to hunt the vulnerable women and children who tended to the flocks. This wasn't random. Whatever this thing was, it had a preference. And that preference made people feel like it was deliberate, like it was thinking. That's the detail that really broke the region's sense of safety. A wolf that hunts livestock is a nuisance. A creature that hunts your daughters, specifically, is something else entirely. Organized hunting parties formed. Local men with muskets went out in groups. And on one early attempt, they actually found it. A group of hunters got close enough to fire a full volley. Multiple men, multiple shots, and they hit it. The beast fell, and then it stood back up, shook it off, and disappeared into the trees. That story spread fast, and it did exactly what you'd expect. It convinced people this was no ordinary animal. By the time the full 3-year toll was counted, the beast had killed around 100 people and injured nearly 300. Some historical estimates run even higher. One source puts the number at nearly 300 people killed when you account for the full scope of attacks across the region. Now, I told you there was one detail I was saving. Here it is. Contemporary accounts describe the beast as having a notably broad chest, an unusually large mouth, and a reddish coat with a dark stripe running down its spine. One 1764 poster described it as reddish-brown with a dark ridge along its back, and multiple witnesses described it as being roughly the size of a calf. Not a large dog, not an oversized wolf, a calf. That's the size of a small cow. No wolf in France, then or now, comes close to that, which is exactly why this mystery has never been settled, and why the theories range from very large wolf all the way to escaped exotic animal, wolf-dog hybrid, and things even stranger than that. But we'll get to what people actually believed it was. First, we need to talk about the royal response, because this is where the story gets almost darkly funny. On September 20th, 1765, François Antoine, the king's 71-year-old royal gun-bearer, and his nephew shot a large wolf near an abbey at Chazes, which was assumed to be the beast. King Louis XV had personally dispatched this man to deal with the crisis, a level of direct royal involvement that was almost unheard of for what was, technically, a regional animal problem. Antoine didn't just kill one wolf either. He also killed the wolf's similarly enormous mate and cub, believing he'd wiped out the entire source of the threat. Antoine was awarded money and titles, and the corpse of the animal was stuffed and sent to the royal court. Case closed. The king's man had done it. France breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the attacks started again in December. For another 18 months, something continued to stalk the villages of Gévaudan, with a reported 30 to 35 more fatalities in that period. The king, believing the beast had already been slain, offered little aid. The court at Versailles chose to ignore these new attacks, insisting that Antoine had already killed the creature. Officially, the problem was solved. Unofficially, people were still dying. Think about what that means for the people living there. The king had declared victory. The press had moved on, and every few weeks, another body was found. They were completely on their own. Luckily, a local nobleman, the Marquis d'Apcher, organized another hunt. Not the crown, not the army. A local nobleman who actually lived near these people and understood what was still happening. And it was during this hunt that the final chapter of this story played out in the strangest way possible. The killing of the creature that ended the attacks is credited to a local hunter named Jean Chastel, who shot it on the slopes of Montmouchet on June 19, 1767. Chastel was not a professional hunter. He was a local farmer with a complicated history, the same man who Antoine had previously thrown in prison after a dispute involving his sons leading royal game wardens into a bog. So, the person who finally ended this was someone the crown had literally jailed. And the circumstances of the kill. Chastel, who had been praying the rosary, saw the beast, quickly took aim, and fired. The bullets stunned the beast. They didn't kill it outright. The hunting dogs finished the job, and when the villagers cut the creature open afterward, they found human remains inside, treated at the time as final proof they'd gotten the right animal. Local legends insist that Chastel didn't use ordinary ammunition. Tales passed down through generations claim he melted down a silver medal of the Virgin Mary to cast a blessed bullet. This detail fueled lasting rumors that the creature was actually a werewolf or supernatural entity. While modern historians often debate the truth of the silver bullet, the story perfectly captures the deep terror and mystical beliefs of 18th century France. And then, the physical evidence vanished. The carcass was loaded onto a wagon and taken to the king in Paris. With a long, arduous journey and an unusually hot summer, the carcass decomposed and was too far gone to identify by the time it reached the capital. Whatever it was, it rotted away before anyone could properly examine it. The mystery sealed itself shut. Supernatural explanations for the attacks continue to circulate even today. Some believe they were the work of werewolves, or meneurs de loup, magical wolf whisperers, who could command wolves to attack on their behalf. These theories weren't invented later. They circulated at the time among the people who lived through it. Theories about the true identity of the beast still remain up for debate. One enormous wild wolf, or possibly a mastiff owned and trained by Jean Chastel himself. Others have proposed the attacks might have been the work of several animals, wolves or wolf-dog hybrids, who had grown accustomed to close quarters with humans. A more recent controversial theory introduces the idea of a very large hyena, possibly escaped from a traveling menagerie. While many French at the time presumed the beast to be a wolf, and many modern scholars agree, some have suggested the beast may not have been a wolf at all. And that's the honest answer, 260 years later. We don't know. Although local hunter Jean Chastel finally killed the beast in 1767, the rapid decay and subsequent destruction of its remains ensured its true scientific identity remains an unsolved mystery. So here's where we land. A creature, whatever it was, killed 113 people and injured 49 more, with 98 bodies partially eaten. It targeted women and children specifically, ignored livestock, survived musket fire, and evaded the king's best hunters for 3 years. The crown declared victory prematurely, abandoned the region, and left ordinary people to die, while officially insisting the problem was solved. And the person who actually ended it was a local farmer who had been thrown in prison by the very royal apparatus that failed everyone else. The Beast of Gévaudan is remembered as a monster story, but the real story is about what happens when a community is abandoned by the people who are supposed to protect them, and what it takes for ordinary people to protect themselves. We still don't know what it was, and honestly, that might be the most unsettling part of all. If you want more stories like this, real history that's stranger than anything fiction could produce. The next video is already waiting for you.